This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. My name is Rob McConnell. Toll-free worldwide, 1-800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Once again, I would just like to take this opportunity of wishing each and every one of you a very happy, love-filled, spiritually-filled, prosperous new year. And may your dreams and the dreams and aspirations of everyone that you know and everyone that you come in contact with this year come true. And may the year 2011 be the start of something wonderful for each and every one of you. X-Zone Nation, my guest this hour is Dr. John Brandenburg. And Dr. Brandenburg was born in Rochester, Minnesota, and grew up in Medford, Oregon. He obtained his bachelor's degree in physics from Southern Oregon University and his MS in applied science at University of California at Davis, and his PhD in plasma physics at UC Davis Extension at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, studying controlled fusion using magnetic fields to confine plasma. He has written 4 books. Dead Mars, Dying Earth on global warming and energy problems with Monica Ricks-Paxton, who won the 2000 Silver Ben Franklin Award for Best Environmental or Science Book. 2 sci-fi novels, Asteroids 2012, Supvelda, I believe is how that's Supvelda. Thank you, John. And
you got to roll your R's a little bit there.
You got to get it really going on that one. And its sequel, Morningstar Pass, the collapse of the UFO cover-up, under the pen name Victor Norgard. And most recently, the Mars Science book, Life and Death on Mars, the New Mars Synthesis, which describes a new concept of Mars, geochemical and biological history. Joining me now is Dr. John Brandenburg. And John, always great having you here on the show. To you and your family, your 2 teenagers, a very, very wonderful New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to all you people up north in Canada. Very happy and prosperous New Year to you.
Tell me, John, how did you welcome in the year 2011?
Some sparkling apple cider with my kids.
Well, I've got to tell you.
And I let my 2 teenagers, it was good to have them both home.
Yes.
And they're not quite old enough to be running around town on New Year's Eve, but we all just stayed. It was very cold here.
What the better half and I did was we just went to the local Chinese buffet for lunch or supper.
There you go.
Then we came home and watched movies all evening until 11 o'clock, where we turned on one of the local events that welcoming the new year from Niagara Falls, Ontario. We opened up a bottle of ice wine, welcomed in the new year, and then went to bed.
Yeah, that sounds like a nice one.
It is.
I remember the turn of the millennium, the year 2000. What I consider, I celebrated it with cookies and milk with my two little small children. Then they were small children, because everyone was afraid that the power systems would shut down.
Y2K.
And it didn't happen. Fortunately, we dodged the big bullet on that one. So.
John, you and I have to take our first commercial break. Please stand by. X Zone Nation, our first guest this hour is John Brandenburg. And we're going to be talking to John about Mars. We're going to be talking to John about his research. And we're even going to touch on 2012. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern, right here on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, Star Cable, and X Zone TV. We'll be back on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break. Don't go away.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best.
Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, or psychic phenomenon? Join me, Tim Bartley, co-host of Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, coming mid-January 2017 to the XZBN. We will channel spirits live and talk to them, revealing all kinds of amazing information. Spiritual attachments will be found and removed on the show, and so much more. To find out when you can listen to Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, visit www.xzbn.net for listeners on both sides of the veil.
Explanation, Dr. John E. Brandenburg is our special guest. He's a senior propulsion scientist at Orbital Technologies. And, John, how long have you been working on Mars research?
Probably since 1984, so, more than 20 years now.
Where did your fascination...
fascinating planet.
Where did your fascination with Mars come from?
Well, as a scientist and also a science fiction fan, of course, Mars has always been a fascinating planet. But I became intrigued because of Cydonia, the Face on Mars controversy.
Well, that's going back a couple of years. And tell me, what is your take on Cydonia? Is there actually a face on Mars?
Based on the latest pictures, the face is still there. The pyramid nearby is still there. You must realize that there are certain factions who don't want anyone to think about that anymore, and so they basically showed some very blurry, poorly processed pictures and said, "See, there's nothing there," and then they wanted everyone to forget about it. And however, what looks like an archaeological ruin there suggests that Mars' climatic history is much different than it has been presented to the public. And that's what I began to investigate really back in 1984. What was Mars' true geochemical and biological history? And this is what I've presented in this new book based on the latest data. and it's quite astonishing. It's much different than people are proposing in their news conferences.
Tell me, John, why is the history of Mars so important to the human race?
Mars is the first Earth-like planet in the universe that we can have access to. Of course, it's one reason that is because it's close to us in our orbit, so it has more Earth-like conditions. But what we find on Mars in terms of life and death is going to really determine how we face the rest of the cosmos. If we find life on Mars, which in fact I think we have found strong evidence of it now, then that means the rest of the universe is alive. That when we look out at the stars at night, many of them are looking back at us.
What do you think happened to the Martian civilization? What happened to any life as we know it?
I'll step back a little bit from the question of a civilization to just say, let's ask the question: was there life on Mars? Life-bearing conditions on Mars, like Earth.
Right.
And if that answer was yes, how long did they last? How long did terrestrial Earth-like conditions last on Mars? Because there's no scientific reason for believing that if life developed on Earth, it couldn't develop on Mars if they had the same conditions. And apparently the early conditions on Mars and Earth were the same. Both had an ocean, both had warm, and that obviously means warm temperatures and high atmospheric pressure. And if you'd been set down on Mars or Earth, you probably wouldn't have been able to tell the difference 4 billion years ago. However, the question is, since Mars is so different than Earth now, how long did these Earth-like conditions persist on Mars? The answer, apparently, is almost 4 billion years, almost its entire geologic history.
Why would anyone want to cover up the actual history of Mars and feed us a conspiracy or a cover-up?
Well, knowledge is power, and if some people don't want knowledge to be widespread, let's say hypothetically there was a UFO cover-up that the governments of the world, including the Canadian government as well as the United States, since we're allies, knew that we were not alone in the universe, and in fact that other people had developed space travel just like we did and were coming here. If the U.S. government and other world governments were aware of that as a fact and did not want to withhold that from the public, then just about anything suggesting life on other planets would become kind of radioactive. And the government can basically encourage people to look for primitive life on other planets or maybe a radio signal, but the moment you get close to actually discovering something, a whole bunch of government agencies become involved that you probably wouldn't think, it ceases to be merely a scientific investigation as far as the government's concerned. It becomes something involving national security. Even a bacteria from Mars becomes a matter of national security.
As a scientist, have you yourself seen any proof that there is or was life as we know it here on Mars, and that there is a conspiracy and a cover-up to suppress the fact that there was life on Mars as we know it sometime in the past?
I can simply tell you that there has been evidence for life on Mars for some time, and it is basically not so much suppressed, but it is attacked within the. There's a sea of hostility in the scientific community, which I believe reflects the fact that the government funds the science. That says that the proof is never good enough. They raise the bar of proof so high now that you can basically, it becomes a roof and you can hide under it. And the question becomes, what are you hiding from? Let me give you an example. The meteorites of Mars all apparently contain evidence for life. And many of these one of the most famous meteorite is ALH 8401, and it has evidence, strong evidence for life on early Mars. And then the later meteorites that are much younger geologically, some of them are only 200 million years old, or were on Mars 200 million years ago. They contain evidence for primitive bacterial life and groundwater. And so we actually have very strong evidence from almost all the meteorites on Mars that there was life on Mars, and that Martian life continues underground in a primitive way up until the present, basically, in geologic time. And not only that, you're aware that they're finding big vents of methane on Mars. These are very large plumes of methane coming out of the ground on Mars, as if organic matter is decomposing underground and spewing out into the atmosphere. Plus, and they can see that both from spacecraft and from Earth-based telescopes now, which have become much better than they used to. So there's a host of evidence that Mars is alive and was alive in the past.
But isn't methane gas also affiliated with or associated with volcanic activity?
Yes. However, they have very good infrared detectors that they've been flying around Mars now on many spacecraft. They haven't found any geologic hotspots on Mars suggestive of any geothermal activity. If they did, that would really make the news, but they haven't. So the origin of this methane, which is in very large amounts, we're talking thousands of tons a year leaking out into the atmosphere, is apparent. The only thing that can produce that much methane, aside from geothermal, is biological.
Now, I agree that, and I understand that there may be bacteria on Mars. There may be very, very small forms of life. But when I talk about life on Mars, I'm talking about people like us. You know, for example, let's take a look at the face on Mars. Who do you think made the face on Mars, and what do you think, Dr. Brandenburg, is the actual reason why this face was made?
We published a scientific hypothesis in about 1990. It was just before the Mars Observer was supposed to go to Mars and take new pictures, and we said that we found other sites on Mars that apparently had what looked like archaeological remains. A place in Utopia actually has two more faces, it looks like. And you can see those on the net if you get in there and just say Utopia face. Brandenburg, because I was the one who discovered it. And but we published a scientific hypothesis that Mars was the home of life like Earth, and that life underwent evolution just like it did on Earth and produced something similar to us that made large monuments just like people on Earth make large monuments. In fact, we proposed that everything that happened on Earth just happened on Mars. And cultures on Earth have many reasons for building large things like the Sphinx. What's really fascinating, by the way, is the face on Mars first appeared in a comic book. It was the early Marvel comics in 1958. It was Kirby Comics, and they had astronauts finding a giant carved face on Mars.
Isn't that strange?
It was, as often happens, science fiction is prescient. It's almost like science fiction writers, even of comic books, have.
John, stand by. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exonation, Dr. John Brandenburg is our special guest. Very interesting man. The name of his new book is entitled, all right, do you have your pencils and paper out? Okay, here we go. Life and Death on Mars, the New Mars Synthesis. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as the X Zone continues right here from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Happy New Year, everyone.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Exonation, if you'd like more information on Dr. John Brandenburg, or if you'd like to purchase any of his books, go to Adventures Unlimited Press. Just put it into Google, and it'll take you right there. 1-800-610-7035 worldwide toll-free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Received an IM for one of our listeners saying, "Hey Rob, how did the X Zone do on Apple iPod downloads?" Well, in the year 2010, we had over 625,000 downloads. So to everybody who downloaded a podcast, thanks guys. Thanks very much. We're going to break 1 million this year. I can feel it in my old and weary bones.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
Yeah, thanks, John. John Brandenburg is our special guest this hour. He's got a new book out, Exonation, and if you're into the investigation and if you'd like the truth about what is happening on that little planet next to us called Mars, the name of the book is Life and Death on Mars, The New Mars Synthesis. John, once again, thanks very much for joining us, and to you and your two children, Happy New Year. Okay, we were talking about the face on Mars. Now, you've got the face on Mars that we all know about now. You and other members of the scientific community believe that the powers to be are purposely covering up the information or the truth about the face on Mars, the life on Mars. Why would they do that?
Well, if you have, let's say hypothetically, you have a UFO cover-up going on, then everything involving extraterrestrial life becomes slightly radioactive. And Mars is charged to 10,000 volts. I mean, anyone who touches it gets involved in a controversy.
But John, if it causes such a controversy, why does the U.S. government spend all this money by trying to find out what the truth is about the planet Mars, if they already know the truth? See, I look at this and I say, well, what is the story behind the story?
It's like driving down the road with one foot on the brake pedal and one foot on the gas pedal at the same time. They are of kind of divided mind about it. It's a government program, Rob.
Oh, okay. That kind of says it all, doesn't it?
Yes, and what we found is that there is evidence because of the Mars ocean that has been discovered, which, by the way, I was the first one to propose at a scientific conference. The Martian ocean bed is on the northern young part of Mars. That means that ocean lasted for almost the entire geologic history of Mars. They suggested it dried up within the first billion years, and that's just not true. Parts of the old ocean bed look almost terrestrial. There are hardly any craters on it, which means it's very young. And this, when you have liquid water, that basically defines a terrestrial environment, because water only stays liquid within a very narrow range of temperatures and a narrow range of atmospheric pressures. That means it's like Earth.
Do you think that Mars might have gone through the same climate change that we're seeing here on this planet now, and that inevitably planet Earth will end up like Mars?
Well, we should take good care of this planet. We've only, as they say in the U.S. Army, you're only issued one planet here. Don't ask for another. On Mars, apparently there was a biosphere that failed. Apparently it had a large greenhouse like on Venus.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with Mars is that it's too far from the sun for that to be stable. If you have a ocean there, it helps stabilize it. But basically, if you have a large impact of an asteroid like the one that wiped out the dinosaurs on Earth,
yes,
then the greenhouse will collapse. And the person who found this out, by the way, was Carl Sagan, even though he didn't talk about it much. Carl Sagan was actually a very brilliant scientist, in addition to being a public promoter of science. And he discovered that a dense carbon dioxide atmosphere on Mars to allow a greenhouse effect would be unstable if a large asteroid or something like that struck and caused a nuclear winter. Because the carbon dioxide would essentially freeze out on the poles as dry ice. And the whole thing would collapse. Mars would basically fall and not be able to get back up again, unlike the Earth, which was struck with an asteroid and managed to recover. Its biosphere recovered from that terrible catastrophe. So on Mars, apparently everything was running fine for a very long period, and then it was struck by a large asteroid that formed the Leo impact basin. On Mars, you can look at it on the map. It's a 200-mile wide double-ring crater up near Cydonia, incidentally. And it's spelled Lyot. It's a French pronunciation because he was a great French astronomer. So that seems to be the story of Mars, is that, you also found out that you couldn't have this greenhouse on Mars unless there was life, that oxygen generated in the atmosphere actually would help stabilize this greenhouse chemically. So you had everything you needed for a kind of Martian Gaia, but a self-sustaining biological system. But then the asteroid apparently ended it about 500 million years ago.
Do you think that prior to the asteroid striking Mars all this time ago, that those civilizations on Mars actually had conquered spaceflight? And is it possible that early Earth mythology, especially when I think about the tale of Atlantis, was not talking about a mythical ocean here on Earth, but Mars, and that people from Mars actually came to this planet?
I, myself, as a scientist, think this is unlikely. And here's the reason. This happened, apparently, this catastrophe, which may have wiped out a civilization on Mars when it happened. That's what the face on Mars is maybe a relic of that civilization. This happened almost about the time when the Earth was just barely getting going as far as biology. We barely even had an oxygen atmosphere at the time. What's interesting, in fact, is that when Mars, approximately the time Mars died, Earth suffered experienced a blossoming of evolutionary life called the Precambrian explosion, which may have, in fact, been an invasion from Mars. A bunch of advanced organisms arrived on meteoritic debris from Mars from this impact, fell in the oceans of Earth, and adapted to their new home and basically took over the place. Wouldn't that be something? That means we're all part Martian. However, the tales of Atlantis are very interesting. As a scientist, I'm certain that there's been extraterrestrial contact in prehistory. And in fact, it's in the Bible. It even speaks of the tale of the Nephilim. It said the sons of God looked at Earth women and saw they were very beautiful and took wives, whomever they chose. And the offspring of these unions were great men about whom many legends were written. That's in the Bible. That's just before the flood of Noah. And that validates all of these tales, like from Greek mythology, of the gods coming down and, bearing heroes from Earth women. So not only were we visited by extraterrestrial life, but apparently some of that life was very similar to ourselves. The human race, in fact, may not be an exclusively terrestrial phenomenon, what we call human.
As a scientist,
and
John,
that scientifically, that's very difficult to understand, but it may actually be true.
As a scientist, John, do you believe that we have been influenced by alien technologies?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me a bit. The book, I tend to be a big fan of the book The Day After Roswell by Philip Corso. And for one thing, I worked in Washington, D.C. for 15 years. What he's the patterns of behavior by our government seem very familiar. He basically said it was that he was his superior, an American general in Army intelligence, that was stuck with a bunch of junk from Roswell and didn't know what to do with it. And basically, because the things had become so secret, were so secretive, he didn't even know who to talk to anymore about it. So he told Philip Corso to just farm the stuff out to various government-funded labs to see what they could do with it. And basically he said, just get rid of it. And there were a number of other funny things about that book that I really liked. And supposedly the story I've heard is that Philip Corso, who of course people said, oh, that can't all be true, he called a stenographer to his bedside when he was on his deathbed and swore out a statement saying that everything he put in the book was, to the best of his knowledge and recollection, correct. So I think that was a good book, and it wouldn't surprise me a bit if some foreign technologies, we say, hadn't made it into the technological stream of development. And things like fiber optics and computer chips, night vision goggles, things like that. So it could have been it would be a very stimulating thing.
But don't you think that the human race has evolved to a point, John, where we could have actually invented all these products ourselves without any influence from extraterrestrials?
Yes, I actually found the idea so thought-provoking. I actually kind of did an investigation, like where did the transistor come from? Well, the transistor came from, the line of transistor development came from the fact that during World War II they were developing crystal detectors for radar signals, and they were growing silicon and germanium crystals. And then they stepped beyond that to try and miniaturize the vacuum tube using these crystals. Of course, and the people invented the transistor, and then ultimately they were putting the idea of putting multiple transistors on chips. That's a kind of a curious one. That may have been a little bit of a jump right there. And that, who knows, because it's not, I can see how the transistor would have been developed based out of World War II research on crystals, but the actual chip where you assemble a whole circuit on one piece of silicon, that seems like a rather interesting conceptual leap there. That in fact, all I'm saying is that when I investigated that, I found a clear line of development for the transistor, but not for the chip itself.
Tell me, John, is there any truth to the theory that there was a massive nuclear explosion one time on Mars?
Apparently, once Mars' climate changed after this asteroid, there was a mysterious and massive nuclear explosion on Mars that left a big radioactive scar. In the book, we show the maps of radiation on Mars, and you can see very clearly there's a big red spot of high radiation in the northern region of Mars near Mare Acidalium, also incidentally near Cydonia. Cydonia seems to have attracted a lot of trouble.
That's the way it seems, yeah.
That's the way it seems, because the Leo impact crater and then this radioactive hotspot basically bracket Cydonia, one to the east, one to the west, and you can see there are apparently debris streamers from this radioactive spot that wrap all the way around the planet. So then there's another hot spot on the exact opposite side, or very, very close to the exact opposite side, the antipode, meaning shock waves raced around the planet and collided on the far side to deposit some radioactive debris. So this looks like it was a planetary-wide catastrophe. Now, as a scientist, one first looks for the hypothesis that involves the minimum number of entities or actors, basically the simplest hypothesis. And in Africa on Earth, we found there were actual natural nuclear reactors that operated. This is something from sounds like a science fiction story in itself, but it's actually true. Nature had some very rich uranium deposits in Africa, and groundwater. Water got into the deposits. This was 1 billion years ago, so the uranium was all reactor grade, and it started nuclear reactors. They found it 5 different sites. So this was a widespread phenomenon. On Mars, the same thing may have occurred, only it was much larger, and instead of just percolating along for a few million years and then shutting down like the ones on Earth did, this large one exploded, or as I say, explosively disassembled, like Chernobyl.
All right, please stand by, John. You and I have to take our final break for this hour. Exonation.
Sure.
Dr. John Brandenburg is my very special guest. The name of his most recent book he's written for is Life and Death on Mars, the New Mars Synthesis. It's available from our good friends at Adventures Unlimited Press. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break. Don't go away.
19 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant check. Officers on the scene.
Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, host of Paranormal Stakeout. With over 36 years in law enforcement, I have learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, UFOs, and extraterrestrials, how we gather the evidence, preserve that evidence, and present it to a jury of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Join me, Larry Lawson, every week on Paranormal Stakeout when, along with my guests, we'll take a journey to prove with indisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Go to xzbn.net for the broadcast schedule and check me out at paranormalstakeout.com.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A soul balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today, www.soulbalancing.world.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Hey, baby, they're playing our song. That is by the Buckinghams. Our special guest this hour is Dr. John E. Brandenburg. And we're talking about John's newest book entitled Life and Death on Mars, The Mars Synthesis. And you can just go to Adventures Unlimited Press and order a copy of this book. How do you get to their website? Very simple. Just Google Adventures Unlimited Press. John, you and I were talking briefly in between the commercial breaks, and before you released the information in your book, you actually sat down and talked to the people at the Defense Department, and after a while, they told you guys just to publish it.
Yep, they did. Well, I'm a patriotic American, and I
Good for you.
thought, well, we never mind how, but we found out that the government was intensely interested in our research on Mars.
I would imagine so.
It was kind of a gumshoe operation, unfortunately. But so it was very easy to contact people who were interested in this stuff at the Defense Department because they'd basically been following us around. And they were, we'd gotten to know them quite well by that time, and we explained to them what we'd found, and they were quite astonished and agreed that the evidence looked quite, it's all circumstantial, but it looks quite strong that there was this large nuclear event on Mars. And so we gave them a full briefing. They reported to superiors, and then they got back to us about 6 months later and basically told us, go ahead and publish it. We're not going to consider this a classified matter. So we did, and I want to thank very enlightened people at the Defense Department for basically saying yes. Let's get this out on to the public, and it's a great mystery. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this before. There are natural nuclear reactors that they found operating in Africa. With in natural uranium deposits. I'm sure with the very rich deposits of uranium and thorium you have up in Canada, you may discover that this has also occurred there. But this would be like 1 billion years ago. And the ones they found on Earth were quite small, probably only as big as a closet. And they operated for about several million years and then shut down. On Mars, whatever happened was much, much larger and then went dangerously unstable and, as they say, explosively disassembled. And this would have been yet another planetary-wide catastrophe on Mars. So the only problem with this hypothesis is that there's no large crater in the center of these radioactive hotspots.
John, you and I have got to say so long. We've run out of time for tonight, but I want to thank you very much for joining us. Congratulations on another great book. We look forward to the next time when you join us here on the X Zone. And once again, John, from everybody here to you and yours, a very happy New Year.
And yours too.
All right, thanks, John. Dr. John Brandenburg has been my guest this hour, X Zone Nation. His new book, Life and Death on Mars, The New Mars Synthesis, is available from our friends at Adventures Unlimited Press. I'll be back on the other side of this news break at the top of the hour at 6.5 minutes past as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go